Supriya, you actually talked about the big tech divorce. And of course, we all know that this whole China-US trade war goes beyond just the physical goods. Although the person who caused it, I don't know if he knows that. But the fact is, we're talking about something called the rise of techno nationalism. Besides the fact that it sounds like it can come from Blade Runner 2021 or 2020, whatever, what is actually techno nationalism?
Techno nationalism, as defined by Alex Capri, who actually wrote this report, Semiconductors at the Heart of the US China Tech War.
Which you quote in your story.
Yes, how a new era of techno-nationalism is shaking up semiconductor value chains. He actually defines it as technology, the link between technology innovation and national security, economic prosperity and social stability. So basically, in a nutshell, it's how governments are now playing a more active role in technology development in order to protect these three aspects.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and actually, in his report, he does cite the example of how the US is actually looking to channel funds to European players like Nokia and Ericsson, so that they have the same sort of competitive leverage as to compete with someone like Huawei, who has been like at the forefront of 5G wireless technology.
Basically, as far as I can tell, is that they don't want to just be beholden to China. I mean, it's more complicated than that. On China's side, they're saying we don't need the Android stores and everything like that. They're developing their own stuff.
China has their plans, their whole Made in China 2025, but it looks like they are accelerating now because of this rise of techno-nationalism. China is actually trying to become more self-sufficient in the technology space. So that's why we're seeing like Huawei now is moving up with their own operating systems, and and there's also reports of China actually creating their own chips, but that's according to some analysts, that's pretty far. I mean, that's pretty far along before that actually materializes into something. Yeah.
But of course, the big question in all of this is, how does it affect us? How does it affect us?
Yeah, because for the longest time we've had this integrated supply chain. We've been supplying to US and China. Our players have been, although a small part, they have been playing a vital part in supplying to the US and China.
Right.
So the question now is, with this divorce, where do our players stand? I mean, where do their loyalties stand?
Oh, do they go with mum or dad?
Yeah. And Alex Capri, whom we spoke to get the Malaysian perspective on things, he actually said it's very important for policymakers to not fall into the binary trap of not like either going with either one, because that can be self-damaging to our players here. You can't be like supporting either side. So when we actually asked the players what it means for them, they were like, so now it's a matter of we're seeing an interest from US and US to set up companies here, but we're also seeing interest from China to set up lines here, and they have to now take that decision whether it's something they want to take on, because some of these lines can be labor intensive, they can be capital intensive. So labor, is a contentious issue in Malaysia.
Very much so.
Yes, and capital, and well, in these economic conditions, do they have the capital to do so? So it's a lot of rethink that I think that they're going to have to put into the supply chains. Yeah.
Speaking of supply chains, I mean, Malaysia's been trying to move up this supply chain forever. Like, I've spoken to so many people about it. I've even written like some pieces about it. But I think the person you quoted in your story said it's going to be very slow and very painful. Just how slow and painful are we talking about?
Well, as mentioned before, because it's a lot of integrated supply chains, it's a lot of work that has been put in before. So it's going to be expensive in the first place to actually have that disintegrated and having two separate supply chains. I mean, having two parts is always going to be more. Why there's always one part is all the synergy, the cost savings that would have been ingrained into that. Now separating that into two, I could assume, be a very, very painful process for these companies.
All right. But you did speak to some players, got their views on it. How do they feel about this divorce?
Well, taking Penang as an example, they've actually seen a lot of interest from US companies setting up shop there. FDI has gone up more than 400%.
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah, and it's really like, maybe we could see Penang going back to the Silicon Valley of the East that it once was. and they're seeing a lot of increased orders from China, a lot of interest from China to set up lines and plants there, and capacity utilization has been taken up quite well there. So with the 5G technology rolling in, it's really interesting to see how this is going to pan out for players over there.
Speaking about 5G, it's something you talk about, but it's very hard to kind of quantify something that's so untangible, right? And in terms of tech, I always think people don't feel it until you can't live without it, or you feel it. So how will 5G change, or based on the people you spoke to?
Okay, just to maybe qualify that, I'm not a tech expert, but what I do understand about the whole thing is with 5G, there's going to be 5G enabled chips, and this is where our players, and it's already happening, our testing players are already testing these chips, and they've seen an increase in demand. So 2019 was a tough year for the semiconductor industry.
It was.
Yes, and now they're saying that this is slowly going to come back because of 5G. Companies are already starting to roll out the new the testing for the new technology, and at the same time, we're going to see our semiconductor players move with that positive momentum.
For more on the stories, pick up a copy of The Edge Weekly at all good newsstands.